I love that song. The theology in there is good. My favorite line is, "Afflictions eclipsed by glory." I swear that kid must have had a great Sunday school teacher growing up. Amen? Or somebody taught that kid something about afflictions eclipsed by glory. Love that line. All right. Well, let's jump into the love does. All right. Let's get back to, I'm in 1 Corinthians 13. Let's jump into this real quick. This message has been a struggle for me, all right? I thought patience was hard on me all week, and then kindness, I had to be nice to Ashley and the kids all week long, gearing up for that. And then this jealousy thing comes into play. Now, you got to understand, I don't know if by nature, I don't know. I'm just not a person that gets jealous, all right? My parents just poured into me who I was, who I can be, who I will be. It just never came across me. It's funny, when Ashley and I started dating, we started dating in, in like November of a long time ago, of 93. And we started dating, and we're at seminary, so the guy-to-girl ratio is not real strong, all right? I mean, it's a, 10 to 1 maybe. All right, and so Ashley's walking around campus, and I'm like, all right, I see her, and I'm like, okay, locked in. All right, I've got to meet her. All right, I don't know what it is. Well, what I found out very quickly was I may have been at the front of the line, but there was about 25 guys behind me going, I believe it is God's will that you and I should meet. All right, because in seminary, you can say that stuff, and some girls actually believe that. All right. It's a great line in seminary if it works, all right? But I'm just not a jealous person. So we kind of started dating. Well, there were still guys waiting in line, all right, to get their dates with Ashley. And the funny thing is, she and I started going out, and then she was still going out with other guys after we kind of started dating. And she would go out to dinner with them or whatever, and she would get like the to-go thing, and she would bring it over to my apartment, and we would hang out the rest of the night. So I always felt very secure in my relationship, all right until the time we got engaged. And so it's just never been something that I've struggled with. So this week, just trying to parse through all this and trying to figure out, okay, what is this jealousy? What is at the heart of this thing? So that's what we're kind of jump into this. And it's weird that we don't have our youth here because, the older you get, you're not youth anymore, you're old, all right? So once you kind of get out of those teenage years, I think life kind of has kicked you around enough, and you start to settle into it. You're like, I'm good. I don't need that. But that idealism of youth kind of kicks in. So they're not here. Hopefully they're watching online over at Lake Elliott. So like I said, we're going to be in 1 Corinthians 13. So let me set it up real quick again, all right? Paul is talking to this Corinthian church. Crazy church? Talk to me. Yeah, seaport, all right? Lots of pagan religions, lots of sailors coming in and out. Just imagine what that brings to it. I always say New Orleans, Atlantic City, Las Vegas, all in the middle of that. Throw in some European, Asian culture into that. You got a mess. This is a messed up, crazy church, but they loved Jesus, all right? And they came out of all of their garbage and out of all their junk. Y'all are absolutely the boringest group of people on the planet compared to the Corinthian church, all right? So just own that. You're just boring, all right? If we were full of drug addicts and prostitutes and whatever in the room, now you're talking Corinthian church. And I always say that they probably met in a bar. It was probably a strip club, probably. But that's kind of where I envisioned the Corinthian church meeting. And they come into this. And it's like, let's understand this. All you guys have gifting from God. And they're like, me? I'm George, the drunk. I'm the guy that's just drunk all the time, but I've come out of that. And Paul's writing to him going, you have a gifting from the Holy Spirit. He's placed a gift in you to benefit this church. And he's saying, you have this gift, and you have this gift, and you have this, all have given you by the Holy Spirit, all so that you can make our church better. All so that you can benefit the ministry of this church. But then he backs up, and in 13:1 it says this, but if I speak human or angelic languages, if I speak with the tongues of men and angels, if you're rocking the King James, right? Some of y'all, I start off and you're going, where's that? Oh, the tongues of men and angels. I got it, all right? But do not have love, I am a sounding gong or a clanging cymbal, all right? You're a drum set in the hand of a 3-year-old. Merry Christmas on that one, right? All right? If I have the gift of prophecy, if I speak, thus saith the Lord, and understand all mysteries, and I understand all knowledge, and if I have all faith so that I can move mountains, imagine that kind of person, but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I donate all my goods to feed the poor, and if I give my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. So remember what Jesus says, lay up treasures in heaven. Well, if I lay up treasures in heaven but do not have love, I actually gained nothing at the end of the day. So love is the catalyst to making it effectual. Love is a catalyst to taking whatever you're gifting with and loving on people. I challenge our worship team almost every Sunday, love the people in the audience with your ability to play the guitar, with your ability to sing, with your ability to do this. Love people with that gift, all right? If you can't do that, get off my stage. You're not doing any good. And this is what Paul was saying to them, all right? So the first one, he says, love is patient. Now, it's not a descriptive word. We need to understand this. Love is patient. That's like adjective in English, all right? But that's not what it is in the Greek. In the Greek, it's love does patience. It's a verb, all right? It's something you're doing. You're doing patient things. You're suffering long. Why? Because the person is more important than your agenda, all right? Which means you're going to be late sometimes, guys. But don't worry about it. Your wife has to put up with your childish behavior, and she's still patient with you, all right? I always laugh at my friends that are my age, 50-year-old, playing video games in the basement. I'm like, yeah, it says mature on the label. I don't think so. All right, I'm not knocking. Hey, if that's how you roll away. But don't. Mature does not describe you in that moment. Okay, so just recognize this patience. It's give and take. We all have burdens that we suffer with. Why? Because we love people more than we love our agendas. And being kind, we talked last week about that. It means being recklessly, radically, heroically, romantically loving to someone, to where they go, I don't get why you're doing that. That is amazing. Why would you do that for me? It's the Samaritan taking on this guy and giving everything he had at the time to rescue this person. I started to post this week. I probably shouldn't say this out loud in church, but that's okay. All right, I do this a lot. All right, sometimes you have to get off your donkey and do something to show love. I'm just going to keep on going, all right? You'll get it about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, I get it. All right, now let's talk jealousy. Jealousy is complicated. Jealousy is not simple, all right? There is a form of jealousy that is simple. And we'll talk about that briefly, but we're going to get into the more of the nitty-gritty of the relationship and see this jealousy thing. Because here's the thing. Love is not jealous. Love does not envy. But God does. Can you explain that one? We're not supposed to be jealous, but how does God describe himself? I am a jealous God, all right? Now, that hurts my head sometimes when I think about that too much, all right? And I've thought about it way too much this week. So why does God get to be jealous and we don't, all right? If you watch any of Oprah, all right, just go type in Oprah and jealous God. And she says she was sitting in church when she was in her late 20s. And some pastor at some big church in Chicago area, some pastor gets up there and starts talking about the omniscience and the omnipotent God and all these things, and great big God, and all, everybody's all fired up. And then he says, and God is a jealous God. And Oprah said, whoa. Why would he have this petty, trivial emotion toward me? Why would he be jealous of me? And evidently, the pastor just kept going and never got the explanation right. Because at that point, Oprah said, I'm out. I can't worship the God of the Bible because he's jealous. He's petty. He's trivial. And I just want to go, oh, you got to listen to the whole story. You see, God is jealous for us. He's not jealous of us. God is not going, oh, well, if I could only be like Chris Edwards. All right. Someday, that's a weird God right there, isn't it? God, he's not going, oh, I wish they would come play with me. And Chris and I were talking this morning. I said, we're a lot more like this than we think we are in this jealous for thing. Because how many of you have children? How many of you are parents in the room? Raise your hand. Let me see your hands so I can see it. You'll get this, right? Imagine your child went and followed a dog in the park. It's now 3 a.m. and you still can't find him. You just go to bed? How many of us would go to bed and go, well, yeah, I'm sure it'll come full circle, all right? It depends on the kid, really, all right? Like I always say, we have twins just in case we lose one, all right? We had a spare, all right? But this is my point. You are very similar to God in this because you would be jealous for the presence of your child if it was 3 a.m. and they were somewhere and you didn't know. We're like this with our dogs. All right? Some of y'all amen. Some of you are like, yeah, if he wanders off. Next. All right, we'll get another one. Okay? But we are like this. I had an experience. Some of y'all know, I did college ministry for a long time, which is a awesome ministry, but it's a tough ministry. See, youth ministry, you parents just shove your kids in the door of the church and go, all right? And so youth ministry is kind of just taking whoever walks in the door, all right? College ministry is interesting because those dynamics change so quickly. Y'all remember what it was like to go be in college? And you know, I'll go here. No, I'm not going to go here anymore. I'm going to go over here. And so very tough. And I had this one girl in our ministry, and we'd had her, you had her for a couple of years in Sunday school, like in youth Sunday school. Her name was Kim, and loved Kim to death. And she was dating this guy named Brad. Brad was one of my guys. He was 9th grade up. I had him discipling him. They were like Ken and Barbie, but it was like Ken and Asian Hawaiian Barbie. All right, they were just this perfect little couple. Well, they both go off to college. They break up when they go to college. I'm devastated. All right, because I'm like, oh no, she won't come back anymore, and it's gonna. And the last time I saw her, she came with someone that she was dating from college, who was not a believer. I'm still jealous for Kim. My heart still breaks. I don't know where she is. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what became of her at all. All I know is the last time I saw her, she walked into college Sunday school with a guy that she had been dating who was not a believer. And I have not seen her since. So this is what I say. We all have this in us. We all have this jealousy that they would be in the best place for them. All right? And so we can all identify that, and God gets to do that, but we don't. Why? Because what is it that we are jealous for most of the time? Us. It always kind of turns back on itself, and we even try and play the game. We go, well, I just think this is the best for them. Well, why do you think that's the best for them? Because it probably benefits you in some way, shape, or form. So God can do it in a perfect way. We generally can't, because our little selfishness comes into play far too often on this, all right? So let's kind of define jealousy. Let's kind of work out some details. I posted this week on this, what's the opposite of jealousy? A lot of people said contentment, admiration, trust, a lot of these ideas. But I want to kind of break it down. And I thought there's kind of two categories. There's the easy category of jealousy, and that's this: when someone has something you want. Everybody with me? That's the easy one. We can knock this out pretty quick. This is about stuff, all right? This is about that person at work got a brand new car. Now, I need to divide something here for you. There's jealousy and there's covetousness, okay? Everybody okay with those two things, all right? We're not supposed to be jealous. We're definitely not supposed to covet because, that made the top 10, right? All right, that's number 10. Don't do that, all right? And to covet is when that person at work gets a new car, I say, man, I want a new car. I want something like that. And the reason why it's one of the commandments is, what are we saying when we say, I want something that I don't have? We're saying, God, you didn't give me what I want. We're childish in this way. And we're blaming God because my job's not good enough, so I can't afford it, so I can't do all this stuff. So we're really, in essence, saying, God, you're not enough. You're insufficient, which is always fascinating to me that 1 and 10 are kind of bookends of the 10 Commandments. I shall have no other gods before me. I shall not covet. Why? Because you're enough. And I'm not going to covet because you're enough. Those are bookends for me. We'll talk about that this summer, though. But this is it. Someone has something you want. So jealousy kicks in when? Covetousness is when I want that thing. When does jealousy kick in? When you have it and I don't. You see the difference in the two? Covetousness is just wanting that. Jealousy is resenting the person who has that you don't have. Now, what's the end game of all that? What always happens when we go even just from covetousness to jealousy? I'm going to use this word carefully. Violence. Jealousy will always beget violence. It may just be in your mind. It may come out in your words. It may just come out in your actions, but it will always be violence to the person. It is the antithesis of love. And this is what's so dangerous. I'll tell you a little story. King Ahab. Y'all should boo at that point. All right? He's married to who? Jezebel. All right? Lauren's been my Jezebel in the past, so she's my person I pick on. All right? King Ahab comes home one day, and he says, this isn't fair. I want Naboth's vineyard. Naboth lived next door, had this great vineyard. King Ahab says, I want it, and he has it. And I want that, and that's not fair that I'm the king and I should have that. Well, Jezebel's just as evil as a woman could get, all right? So she says, this is not a problem. Let's have a dinner. We'll invite everybody over. We'll put Naboth down here on the end. We'll put 2 guys next to him. In the middle of dinner, they'll go, why are you talking rebellion and treason against the king? You should be killed. Pick him up, take him out, kill him. Merry Christmas. Now you have Naboth's vineyard. You see how this works? Jealousy. When covetousness is aimed at a person, always leads to violence. Even if it's just within your heart. When you start to be jealous of a person, now you're doing violence to them. And that's what's very dangerous. And that's what we have to be very careful of. You see, love does what? And like I said, that list of things. Love does contentment, does gratefulness. All right? Can you imagine? You can't be jealous and be generous at the same time, right? You can't be jealous and grateful at the same time. Keep going with it. It rejoices. This is from Romans 12. The living sacrifice rejoices with those who rejoice. Is that what we do? Someone's rejoicing because they got a brand new car. And you're going, well, that's not fair. Well, you just slid off the altar right there. You want to be a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, which is your logical service to Him? When someone else is rejoicing, you rejoice with them. And if you're not, you're sliding off the altar and you're going, now it's about me. And I'm mad and I'm jealous because I should have that too. And they did something to get that. So what else? You appreciate it? Here's what I would say just bluntly. What love does in the face of jealousy? Quit. Just stop. Stop being jealous of other people's stuff. Are you kidding me? Look around. All of you got here. I'm guessing nobody walked here today. All right? And thanks to Johnson Ford, who's sponsoring our sermon today, you had a car to get here or a truck to get here in. All right? And if you didn't go by Johnson Ford this afternoon, and you could. No, I'm kidding. All right, but this is the idea. Look how blessed you are. Do you have any idea on a worldwide relative scale of how wealthy you are? Top one, easy. Easy. Most of you are much higher than the top 1%. The provision that you have, the house that you live in. I'll never forget when we've got sort of an adopted, kind of pretend adopted stepson, a son from Ukraine. He came over. He grew up in an orphanage, literally. Born 2 days later in the orphanage, has no idea who his parents are. He comes over here to visit for the very first time, comes to America, and we're driving around. Now, where we lived in Atlanta was a pretty wealthy area, all right? And I remember driving past this house. It had to have been a 10-bedroom kind of house. It just off the wall. And I remember him asking me, how many people live in that house? I said, probably 4, maybe. Oh, she's okay. I love babies. Usually she's good for me, all right? How many people live in that house? And I just went, oh my goodness. He's lived in a room with metal cots, 15 to 20 metal cots lined up with one community bathroom and one cafeteria for the last 18 years. He has no idea how good we have it here. So let me just say this. Quit being jealous. Appreciate what you have. And also, quit feeding the bulldog. Y'all with me on this? You live in a trailer park, quit looking at Better Homes and Gardens. All right? You don't, what are you watching on TV that's feeding your jealousy? That's feeding your covetousness? All right? Be careful what you put in your brain. All right? Some of you couldn't afford a vacation down to the lake over here at Bringle, all right? But you got your Travel and Leisure magazine looking through it going, I wish I had this, I wish I had this. You're feeding the bulldog, and it's going to eat you alive. It's going to turn you away and against people, and you will do harm in this way. So let's be very, very, very careful with that. Let's do something other than that. And we see these stories in the Bible. Cain and Abel. What happened? Cain got jealous. And what did he do? Violence. All right? The brothers with Joseph, they got jealous. What happens? Violence. It happens over and over and over. Recognize that you are doing violence to someone, even if you think in your good little church walking in self, you're not that bad. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. The second one's a little more complex, right? First one is I'm jealous because that person has something, all right? So I'm jealous of that person because they have that thing. I covet that thing. I'm jealous of that person. I'm doing violence to that person, thereby not loving them, all right? The second one's a lot more complex, all right? This is when someone is threatening or you perceive that someone is threatening to take something or someone that you have. And let me say that again. This is where it gets complex, all right? Someone is threatening, or you perceive, even more so, you perceive that someone is threatening to take something or someone from you. We even have a jealousy ritual in the Old Testament. If you look in Numbers 5, if a spouse gets jealous and accuses their spouse of cheating on them or doing something we have a whole ritual. And it's this crazy, crazy off-the-wall angels going, hey, make them do this now, ritual, all right? But it's in the Bible. Why is it in the Bible? Because this is real. This is real life. This really does happen. And my question is this, how can you be jealous if you possess it? How can you be jealous of someone if you possess it? Because they're a threat? And here's what I would ask. If you're that worried, the worry and the threat is probably because you perceive that you don't really have it. That you don't have full security in that, whether that be in a title at work, a position at work, or a relationship that you have with someone. You're afraid you're going to lose that person that you should feel confident that you have. And your jealousy stems not from that person's actions, but your insecurities. Now, let me be real clear with this. All right? Husbands, if you're complaining, my wife is so jealous. Every time I flirt with some other girl, she gets all jealous. All right, Nimrod, quit flirting with other girls. Put on your big boy pants and grow up. The security of your partner is your responsibility, not theirs to fight the insecurity. And I don't care if this is just dating relationship, engaged, married for 85 years. I don't care. Your responsibility is to make the person in your life feel secure. And I guarantee you, when they feel secure, they're not going to be jealous. Just like Ashley and I dating, I was not jealous of these other guys could they compete, really, seriously? Yeah, one guy was much better looking than me. Another guy was like 6'6", bodybuilder kind of a guy. But she made me feel secure. She showed me that she loved me. She showed me that she cared about me. So what was I supposed to be jealous about? She made me feel secure in that relationship. Do you? Do you make your employees secure? Do you make the people at work around you feel secure? Do you make the people you're in a relationship, do they feel secure? That's your job. And the more you do that, the more you are showing them love. All right? So here's where I want to go. I want to go to 1 Samuel 18. I'm going to quickly tell this story. Go to 1 Samuel 18. Let me catch you up on the history, okay? So Israel demands a king. God says, all right, I'll give you a king. Now, this is not oh, yay, they finally asked for a king. Let me give them one. They wanted a king because they had this army coming over the mountain that had a habit of cutting off the right thumbs and poking out the right eye of the men of the city. Now, why would you do that in this culture? Because what's the prominent weapon of choice? A bow and arrow. Very difficult to draw a bow and arrow without a thumb. Very difficult to aim without the right eye. So they've got this guy topping the hill, but they come at this going, oh, we just want to be like other nations. No really reason whatsoever except for that guy that's coming over the hill, all right? So they demand a king. So God gives them exactly what they want, at least in appearance. They take this guy who is the most impressive man, the most goodest, if you want to use the actual Hebrew word here. He was the most goodest. There wasn't anybody gooder than him, all right? This was the guy. And not only was he the goodest, but he was also a head taller than everybody else. Why? What did Israel want? They wanted a king. For what purpose? To fight their battles. So God gave them the exact proportional person that they wanted. What they didn't ask for was one with a good heart. Now, what happens to him? On the day he's coronated, he is found hiding in the baggage. Literally, the nation of Israel is paraded in front of Samuel. And Samuel goes, the tribe of Benjamin has been chosen. The clan of Kish has been chosen. The family. And Saul, come on down. You're the king. And everybody looks around. And it's so funny. It's God who goes, he's hiding in the baggage. And they go and they find him. You're king. Imagine this on the inauguration day. The president being inaugurated is hiding in the bathroom going, I'm not going. I don't want to go. Don't make me be president. That's kind of the image. What does that tell you about this guy? He's the goodest, the greatest of all the people physically. He's a head taller than everybody else, but he's scared to death. Keep going because this gets worse. When you get down to chapter 13, Jonathan's out fighting the Philistines. He and his armor bearer, they're just going at it just for the fun of it. Samuel is supposed to come and offer up an offering. Well, the Philistines are attacking, and Saul's like, I ain't waiting. I can't wait anymore. I can't wait anymore because my people are deserting me. I've got to do it myself. Samuel shows up 5 minutes later going, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? I was afraid. He should have killed Jonathan at one point because of an oath that he had made. But the people loved Jonathan, so what did he do? Okay, I won't kill him. God told him to kill the Amalekites, kill all of them. No, nobody lives, none, period. He doesn't do it because he's afraid of his own people. We see this over and over and over again. David goes out and fights Goliath. Why? Who should have fought Goliath? Who should have fought the giant? Maybe the guy that's a head taller than everybody else in the room? Maybe the king who's chosen because he's a great warrior? Where was he, though? I'll be back here in my tent if you need me. And David goes out to fight. Now, here's where I want to pick us up in 18. When David had finished speaking with Saul, this is right after the whole Goliath thing, Jonathan committed or covenanted himself to David and loved him as much as he loved himself. That's a good line right there. You should remember that. Actually, it says that 3 times in the Old Testament text. Remember that. Jonathan loved Saul as much as he loved himself. The Hebrew is really cool. Their hearts were knitted together, is what it says. All right? Saul kept David with him from that day on and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as much as himself. Then Jonathan removed the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his military tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. David marched out with the army and was successful in everything Saul sent him to do. Saul put him in command of the soldiers, which pleased all the people and Saul's servants as well. As the troops were coming back, when David was returning from killing the Philistines, the women came out. Careful, ladies, you have a lot of influence. Just need you to know that. The women came out from all the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing with tambourines, with shouts of joy, and with 3-stringed instruments. And as they celebrated, the women sang, Saul has killed his thousands. But David, David has killed his tens of thousands. Look at the next verse. Saul was furious and resented this song. They credited tens of thousands to David, he complained, but they only credited me with thousands. What more can he have but the kingdom? So Saul watched David jealously from that day forward. He's got this great general. He's got this great guy that everybody loves, that he's in charge. He's winning battles. He's doing all this great stuff. All Saul has to do is kick back and enjoy all that he's doing. Now, why does Saul feel so threatened? Because of a song? Because somebody made an offhand comment? Somebody put up this little poem out there that praised Saul but also praised David? And look at the comparison. Look at the security Saul feels in himself when someone credits someone else. Why? Why does he feel this way? We talked about it, his fear. Every step of the way, he was afraid. He was afraid. He was afraid. And when this song came by, he just was afraid even more. He was even afraid of David. All right? So what effect do other people have on your jealousy? What about the words that other people have? You know, what if you see your inadequacies and you see them exemplified in someone else? What happened? Goliath. Why did David go out there and Saul stay home? Saul knows he's afraid. He says it all the time. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. Goliath comes along, and what does he do? He stays in the camp. Why? I ain't going out there. You seen how big that guy is? That guy's huge. I'm not going out there. David, I'll go out there. What does Saul? When Saul sees his own inadequacies perfectly demonstrated in David, what happens? He gets jealous. What are the inadequacies you know you possess? And what happens when you encounter people have those as their strengths? How do you feel about them? Especially when you're king and he's just a boy. And now everybody's singing songs about this. What happens? You become jealous. Why? You have the crown on your head, right? Why? Because you were given it. And just like they gave it to you, what are you thinking? They could take it off my head and give it to him because he's more worthy. So the inadequacies start to come into play. So when you see your inadequacies come into play, you need to be very careful of people who have those as their strengths because you're going to get jealous. And when you get jealous, you always do violence to the other person. So when that other person comes along and there's something you're not, you need to be very careful in this moment. You need to watch yourself very carefully. What do you do? Because what's Saul going to do for the next 15 years? He's going to chase David all over Judea, trying to kill him because he's jealous. You see the violence? All over the place. And here's the thing. What did Saul think David was after? The king, the kingship, right? The crown. I know he's out to get me. What more could he want than my kingship? What did God say David was after? God says, I have found a man after my own heart. Saul thought he was after the crown. You see, fear feeds jealousy. And fear is false expectations about reality. And it will feed your jealousy, and it will cause you to do violence, not to love. You need to be very careful with your inadequacies. What's also interesting is, over and over in the text, it says this person loved David. Who loved David? Jonathan loved David. The people loved David. Saul's daughter loved David. That's got to hurt. All right? Your own daughter turning against you. All right? That'd be horrible. She starts picking somebody that I just can't stand that's fighting against me. Everybody loves David. You know, in the whole Bible, never once does it say, and they loved Saul. Never once. Do you see the inadequacies that come to play? Be very, 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 very careful of these. All right? I'll write this down. Let me read it. You only fear losing that which you never thought you had. You only fear losing that which you never thought you had or that you never deserved. It's always your inadequacies that feed this jealousy. And here's the thing. What if Saul had killed David, that first spear? Would he have lived the rest of his life in perfect bliss and happiness and contentment? No. Why not? Because the next guy. There would always have been a next guy. Until you fix your inadequacies and your insecurity, you will always fear the next person. And imagine the life Saul lived. He spends almost his entire back half of his kingship trying to kill somebody that could have been his best general. It's tragic. It's tragic. Now let's switch to Jonathan. How does Jonathan handle all this? Now, here's what I like about Jonathan and David. Now, we don't know their ages. All right? The text would kind of imply that Jonathan was much older than him. Because David, you got to understand, wasn't even born until 10 years into Saul's reign. All right? So when David is fighting Goliath, probably about 15 years of age, Saul has been king for 25 years. Now, we don't know where Jonathan is. We always get the impression that Jonathan and David were the same age, right? They hung out together. They were teenagers together. They shot bows and arrows and all that stuff. Well, they were very similar. What do we see with Jonathan? Every time Jonathan is mentioned, he's doing something brave. You think through the text. Every time you see Jonathan, he's doing something brave and noble and good. And every time you see David, except for Bathsheba, what's he doing? Something brave and noble and good. They had a camaraderie. They saw their strengths in each other. Saul saw his weaknesses. Jonathan saw his strength. And so he loved David as he loved himself. You see, Jonathan was not worried about David. And let me prove it to you. Look back at the text again. Look at verse 3. Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as much as himself. Remember, he loved David, the one who was a threat or perceived threat to everyone else. Do you love the person that you perceive to be threatening you? That's the question. Not do you not perceive the threat. Do you love the person who you perceive to be threatening? Then Jonathan, look at what he does. This is so cool. You got to see this. You got to see this. All right? Verse 4. Then Jonathan removed the robe he was wearing. Who else had a robe that was really cool? Joseph did. And the brothers wanted that robe. They hated that he had that robe. So the robe meant something. When the prodigal son comes home, what's the first thing the father says? Bring him a robe. This is a sign of family. This is a sign of prominence. So Jonathan removed the robe he was wearing, gave it to David. Now, his robe was his title. I'm the prince. I'm next in line. I'm going to be the king. And he takes it off and he says, here, David, you take it. The very thing that supposedly was the threat. What does he do? Does he go, I don't like that David guy. All right, he's hanging out with my sister flirting with him, all this stuff. I don't like this. It's not good. He's trying to take my... Instead of going that route, he takes off his robe and gives it to David. Keep going with it. It gets better. Along with his military tunic. So not only is his princely, the lineage of the kingship, but also his military tunic. So his power, his sword, his bow, and his belt. What is he doing? What in the world is this? Why is he giving all this away? You see, love does not do jealousy. Love does risky things. You see, everybody's saying, oh, David's just trying to do this. He goes, all right, let's see. Let me give all this away. Let me give all this away. Because what could Jonathan have done with his robe, his tunic, his sword, his belt, his bow? What could he have done? These are mine. Isn't that what we retreat into? Isn't it? This is mine and you can't have it. Jonathan denies himself and goes, this is yours. See what you can do with it. You see, love doesn't grab it and go, it's mine. You can't have it. Love risks. Love is Jonathan going to David and saying, I love you as much as I love myself. Here, if this is what's best for us, then you take it. If this is what will do God's will, if this is what will make God the best, you do it. You see, he risked everything because he trusted God enough to let everything go. Do you? Do you trust God enough to let everything go? You see, what if David had taken over the kingdom? What if David had done all this stuff and totally fooled Jonathan? Would anybody go, that Jonathan was horrible? No. Who's going to be the villain in that story? David would. Not Jonathan. You know why? Because Jonathan risked letting go of his stuff because he trusted God that God would take care of him. What happened with Jonathan's kid? Some of you can pronounce it, some of you can't. His name is Mephibosheth. When David becomes king eventually after the death of Saul and all of his sons at Mount Gilboa, David becomes king, and the first thing he asks is there anyone left in the house of Jonathan that I can bless? Why? Because Jonathan loved him as himself and did not grasp and go, this is mine, you can't have it. But he said, I'm willing to risk this. I'm willing to love you enough that I will risk all of this. I'm not going to grasp it and say, it's mine and you can't have it. He trusted God with it. He absolutely trusted God with all of these things. 1,000 years later, God, in his righteous jealousy, says, Jesus, it's time. And he sends forth his only begotten son. Why? Because that's what you do when you love. And I love the comparison to Jonathan because Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God. And what does he do with his robe, with his military tunic, with his bow, and with his belt, and with his sword? What does he do? He lays it all down. In the letter to the Philippians, Paul quotes this poem. It said, existing in the form of God, he did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped. He takes all of this, the prominence of heaven, the glory of heaven, and he strips down off of this. And he says, I don't need to grasp it. I don't need to, this is mine. You can't have it. He says, I know who I am. I know what I have. And I'm willing to lay it all down. And he emptied himself. For you, for me. In that righteous jealousy that says, I have to get them back to me. God sent Jesus, who risked everything to rescue you. And what Paul says at the beginning of that poem is this: make your own attitude that of Christ Jesus. Risk it, people. Risk. Deny yourself. Don't get hung up on yourself. Don't grab everything you can in this life and this person that you want to be with or this thing that you love. And don't grab all these things and go, these are mine, you can't have them. You're being a child. Grow up. Trust God with this. Recognize what he can do with all these beautiful things. And be secure that the story's going to end well for all of us, just as it did with the family of Jonathan. All right, let's pray.